I think you have a customer.
A television network looked at a completed Christmas special, called it a disaster, and nearly shelved it before it ever aired. The animation was cheap, the jazz soundtrack was wrong, and they let a child, an actual child, deliver a Bible passage on primetime network television. Every instinct in the industry said this thing would fail. It aired anyway. 50 million people watched, and it never stopped airing. Here's what almost nobody knows about A Charlie Brown Christmas. The story behind it is more fascinating, more improbable, and more emotionally resonant than the special itself. This wasn't a triumph of a well-funded studio machine working at full capacity. This was a collection of deeply stubborn, creative decisions made against every piece of professional advice available by people who were willing to risk their careers on the possibility that audiences were smarter and more feeling than the television industry believed. 12 facts. 12 moments. And by the time we reach number 1, you'll understand why a 25-minute animated special produced in less than 6 months has outlasted virtually every other piece of television made in 1965. Let's begin. 12. The special that was never supposed to happen. At all, the origin of A Charlie Brown Christmas is, on its surface, a story about a corporate opportunity. In 1965, the Coca-Cola Company approached producer Lee Mendelson about the possibility of creating a holiday special based on Charles Schulz's Peanuts comic strip. The strip had been running since 1950, was enormously popular, and had appeared on the cover of Time magazine earlier that year. From a marketing perspective, the alignment was obvious, but here's where the story becomes interesting. When Coca-Cola called Mendelson, he told them he had already produced a Peanuts television special. The problem was that this was not entirely true. He had produced a documentary about Schulz, a short biographical film that had never been picked up by any network. He had not produced a Peanuts animated special. What he had produced was a conversation about the possibility of one. Mendelson called Schulz immediately after hanging up with Coca-Cola. He then called animator Bill Melendez, who had worked on Peanuts Ford Motor Company commercials. The three of them had roughly 12 months to deliver a completed special. In the end, owing to production schedules and network commitments, that window compressed to approximately 6 months. 6 months to write, animate, score, voice, and deliver a network-quality holiday special for one of the most recognized cartoon properties in the country. The fact that it exists at all is a minor miracle. The fact that it's any good is something closer to an inexplicable one. And the fact that it's a masterpiece, well, that's the story we're here to tell. 11. Charles Schulz drew from a depression he wasn't hiding. People tend to read A Charlie Brown Christmas as a warm holiday fable. A story about a sad little boy finding the meaning of Christmas and being lifted up by his friends. And it is that. But the emotional authenticity at the center of the special didn't come from holiday sentiment. It came from Charles Schulz's own inner life, and he was remarkably candid about that. Schulz was, by most accounts, a deeply melancholic person. Not in a debilitating clinical sense, but in the way that artists who spend their lives excavating human loneliness tend to carry that weight personally. He had known genuine hardship. His mother died of cancer while he was serving in World War II, a loss he never entirely processed. He struggled with anxiety throughout his career. He was, in his own words, a person who understood what it felt like to be Charlie Brown. The opening sequence of the special, Charlie Brown walking through a snowy neighborhood, surrounded by friends who are laughing and enjoying themselves, feeling inexplicably and frustratingly sad, wasn't written as a character study. It was written as a confession. Schulz told Mendelson that he wanted the special to capture a very specific feeling, the disconnect between the happiness that the Christmas season promised and the quieter, more complicated emotional reality that many people actually experienced. This was 1965. Television Christmas specials were not in the business of depicting seasonal depression. They were in the business of warmth, resolution, and the commercial confirmation that everything was fine. Schulz wanted to say something true, something uncomfortable, something that millions of people felt every December but had never heard spoken aloud on their television screen. That honesty is why the special landed the way it did. Not the animation, not the music, the honesty. 10. The network hated it before anyone saw it. When CBS executives screened A Charlie Brown Christmas before its December 9, 1965 air date, the reaction in that room was not what Lee Mendelson had hoped for. According to Mendelson's own documented recollections, the network response ranged from skeptical to openly alarmed. The executives had a list of concerns, and the list was not short. The animation was too limited, the jazz score was unconventional and tonally wrong for a children's holiday special. The voice cast was made up of actual children rather than adult actors performing child voices, a significant deviation from standard practice at the time. The pacing was slow. There was no laugh track, which in 1965 was practically unheard of for a television comedy. And then there was the moment that reportedly concerned the network most of all. The scene in which Linus walks to the center of the stage and recites, verbatim, the Gospel of Luke, chapter 2, verses 8 through 14, from the King James Bible. Primetime network television, no laugh track, actual scripture. CBS was not enthusiastic. Mendelsohn and Schulz were given the clear impression that the network expected the special to perform poorly. One account suggests that some CBS executives believed the broadcast would be a one-time event, something the network had contractually committed to and would fulfill, but not something they expected to schedule again. What happened on December 9, 1965, was not what CBS had anticipated. Roughly half the televisions in the United States tuned in. 50 million people watched. The special received critical acclaim, and CBS, which had nearly buried it before it aired, would go on to broadcast it every single year for the next 50 years. 9. Vince Guaraldi got the job because of a coincidence. The jazz score of A Charlie Brown Christmas is now so deeply embedded in the cultural fabric of the holiday season that it's difficult to imagine the special existing without it. Vince Guaraldi's compositions, Christmas Time Is Here, Linus and Lucy, O Tannenbaum, played in a minor key jazz arrangement, function less as background music and more as emotional architecture. The music tells you how to feel before the images have a chance to. But Guaraldi didn't get the job through a traditional pitch process or a competitive audition. He got it because Lee Mendelsohn heard a song on the radio while driving. Mendelsohn was in his car when he heard Guaraldi's 1962 instrumental Cast Your Fate to the Wind, a jazz composition that had won the Grammy Award for Best Original Jazz Composition that year. Mendelsohn pulled over. He found out who had written it. He called Guaraldi's manager. And that conversation, initiated by a song heard through a car radio, led directly to one of the most recognizable scores in the history of American television. Guaraldi was not a film or television composer at that point in his career. He was a jazz pianist working in the San Francisco Bay Area. The Peanuts documentary Mendelsohn had produced, the one that never aired, had used Guaraldi's music, and when the Christmas special went into production, bringing Guaraldi along was a natural extension of that relationship. What's remarkable is how completely Guaraldi's sensibility matched what the special required. The jazz idiom, its improvised feeling, its emotional ambiguity, its capacity to be simultaneously playful and melancholic, was exactly right for a story about a child who feels lonely at Christmas and can't quite explain why. A more conventional orchestral score would have told you the story was about warmth and resolution from the opening frame. Guaraldi's music told you the story was about something more complicated, and it was correct. 8. The children's voices were recorded with an unusual method. You've watched A Charlie Brown Christmas as an adult, especially if you first watched it as a child. You've probably noticed that the voice performances have a quality unlike anything in conventional animation. There's a hesitancy to them, a naturalness. The children sound like children not because they're good child actors, but because they are, in several cases, quite young and genuinely uncertain. Some of them stumble slightly. Some of their line readings have a quality of genuine discovery, as though they're encountering the words for the first time. This is not a coincidence. The voice recording sessions for the special were conducted in a way that deliberately elicited this quality. The children were recorded without having fully rehearsed in the traditional sense. Director Bill Melendez and producer Lee Mendelsohn made choices that prioritized authenticity over polish. They wanted the voices to carry the weight of actual childhood rather than the performed version of childhood that adult voice actors typically delivered. The child playing Linus, Christopher Shea, was approximately 7 years old at the time of recording. The child playing Charlie Brown, Peter Robbins, was around 9. These were not seasoned performers. They were children who had been cost-taught and guided through the material with the specific intention of capturing something that over-rehearsal would have destroyed. The result is that A Charlie Brown Christmas sounds different from virtually every other animated special produced in that era. The performances have texture, they have hesitation, they have the particular quality of sincerity that children possess before they learn to perform sincerity for an audience. And that quality is one of the things that makes the special feel, 50 years later, more emotionally real than productions made with far greater resources and technical sophistication. 7. The tree was a statement, not an accident. The aluminum Christmas tree is central to everything the special is saying, and it was a very deliberate choice made at a specific cultural moment. To understand why it works, you need to understand what was happening in American living rooms in 1965. Aluminum Christmas trees had become genuinely fashionable in the early 1960s. The Aluminum Specialty Company of Manitowoc, Wisconsin, had introduced them commercially in 1958, and by the early 1960s they were being sold in enormous numbers. They were sleek, modern, and required no care or maintenance. They came with color wheels that projected rotating hues onto the metallic branches. They were, in their way, the perfect consumer artifact, designed to look festive without requiring any of the inconvenience that a real tree demanded. Schulz found them deeply dispiriting. He made no secret of this. The aluminum tree in the special is not just a prop, it's an argument. When Charlie Brown chooses the small, drooping, utterly impractical real tree over the aluminum variety, he's making a statement that Schulz genuinely believed, that the authentic, imperfect, living thing is worth more than the manufactured, frictionless substitute. That meaning requires vulnerability, that something you have to take care of is more valuable than something that takes care of itself. This was, in 1965, a mildly subversive thing to say on commercial television. The special was sponsored by Coca-Cola. It was, functionally, an advertisement for the holiday season. And in the middle of it, Schulz inserted a fairly pointed critique of consumer culture and the commercialization of Christmas itself. The network didn't catch it, the sponsor didn't stop it, and 60 years later, the aluminum tree and the sad little real tree are among the most enduring images in American holiday iconography. The man making an argument against commercialism did it inside a commercial, and it worked perfectly. 6. The biblical scene almost didn't make the cut. If you were going to identify the single moment in a Charlie Brown Christmas that should not have survived the production process, the moment that every professional instinct said to cut, that every network note argued against, that violated every established rule of what primetime television was supposed to do, it's the Linus scene. Charlie Brown, overwhelmed by his failure to direct the Christmas play and disillusioned by what Christmas seems to have become, cries out, genuinely cries out, asking if anyone can tell him what Christmas is all about. Linus walks to the center of the stage, asks for the lights to be dimmed, and then recites, from memory, the nativity passage from the Gospel of Luke, unedited, uninterrupted, in its entirety, on network television in prime time to an audience of children and families. Schulz insisted on it. This was, by all documented accounts, the point at which he drew a clear line. He told the producers that if the biblical passage was removed, he would not participate in the special. He had a simple, direct reason. He believed that the story of the Nativity was, in fact, what Christmas was about. Not as a sectarian statement, not as a challenge to viewers of different backgrounds, but as an honest answer to the question Charlie Brown was asking. To answer it with anything else would have been dishonest. Mendelssohn and Melendez supported him. The network was given no choice. The passage stayed. And what happened when it aired was that millions of viewers, of various backgrounds, of various religious commitments, of various relationships to the holiday, found it not alienating but moving. Because the scene isn't really about religion. It's about sincerity. It's about a child standing in a spotlight and saying, without apology or irony, that he knows the answer and he's going to give it to you straight. In a world of hedged language and carefully managed television sentiment, it was a radical act of directness, and people loved it for exactly that reason. If you're finding this story as compelling as it deserves to be, hit the subscribe button. This channel is built for people who want to know the story behind the story. There's a lot more where this came from. 5. The special changed what animation was allowed to do. Before A Charlie Brown Christmas, the dominant theory of television animation, at least as practiced by the major studios, was one of energy and movement. Characters moved constantly. The visual field was busy. Silence was treated as a failure of engagement, something to be filled as quickly as possible with either sound or action. Bill Melendez, working within the severe constraints of a limited budget and an accelerated timeline, produced something that looked completely different. The characters in A Charlie Brown Christmas often hold still. They stand, they pause. There are moments of genuine visual quiet, frames where nothing is moving, where the only sound is Guaraldi's piano, where the audience is simply allowed to sit with a feeling for a moment before the story moves forward. This was not, in the first instance, entirely by choice. The budget limitations of the production made the kind of fluid, full animation that larger studios could afford effectively impossible. But Melendez and his team made a virtue of the constraint. They leaned into the stillness. They used the limited animation as an expressive tool rather than apologizing for it. The result was that A Charlie Brown Christmas accidentally demonstrated something that animation theory hadn't fully articulated yet, that stillness can be as powerful as movement, that a character who stops moving and simply exists on screen for a moment can communicate more emotional weight than a character in constant energetic action, that the audience's imagination, given room to operate, will fill in what the animation doesn't show. This lesson was not lost on the animation world. The influence of the Peanuts specials on subsequent generations of animators, including several who went on to do significant work at studios that would later define the medium, is documented and acknowledged. The constraints that looked like limitations in 1965 turned out to be pointing towards something more sophisticated than the dominant aesthetic of the time. 4. The soundtrack album invented a genre. On February 7, 1964, the Beatles arrived in America and changed popular music. On December 9, 1965, A Charlie Brown Christmas aired, and Vince Guaraldi's soundtrack did something that nobody in the music industry had expected or planned for. The album of the A Charlie Brown Christmas soundtrack was released in conjunction with the special. It wasn't a traditional holiday record. It wasn't carols or orchestral arrangements or celebrity vocal performances. It was a jazz trio, piano, bass, and drums, playing original compositions and jazz interpretations of traditional material, recorded with the warmth and spontaneity of a live club performance. The album sold enormously. It returned to the charts year after year. Eventually, it would be certified platinum multiple times, and it is now recognized as one of the best-selling jazz albums in the history of the format. For many Americans, particularly those who came of age in the decades after 1965, it became the sonic definition of the Christmas season, independent of the special itself. People who had never watched A Charlie Brown Christmas owned the album. People who no longer had a record player had the tunes memorized. What Guaraldi created, almost inadvertently, was the template for what would become known as the holiday jazz album. That entire subgenre, the intimate, piano-driven holiday record that prioritizes feel over spectacle, that sounds like a small room full of warm people rather than a concert hall full of production, traces its aesthetic DNA directly to what Guaraldi recorded in 1965 for a television special he composed in a matter of weeks. The music was supposed to serve the special. Instead, it outgrew it. And in doing so, it gave the world a new way to hear December. 3. The blanket was Schulz's most personal symbol. Linus Van Pelt carries a security blanket. This is one of the foundational visual facts of the Peanuts universe, so familiar that it registers as purely comic. A character quirk, a running gag, a piece of iconography as recognizable as Charlie Brown's zigzag shirt. But in A Charlie Brown Christmas, the blanket does something it doesn't do in the comic strip. And that moment is one of the most quietly extraordinary things in the entire special. When Linus delivers his nativity speech and reaches the words, "Fear not," he drops the blanket. He lets it fall to the stage and continues the passage without it. It's a brief visual moment. It lasts perhaps 2 seconds. Many viewers don't consciously register it, but Schulz put it there deliberately. And the people who have written seriously about the special have come to regard it as the emotional axis on which the entire story turns. The security blanket, throughout the Peanuts strip, represents anxiety. It represents the comfort objects we cling to when the world feels uncertain. Linus is the character most associated with philosophy, with genuine wisdom, with the capacity to speak truth clearly. And yet he carries this blanket everywhere, this visible emblem of the fear underneath his certainty. When he drops it at "Fear not," he's doing something the story has been building toward without announcing it. He's demonstrating what he's describing. He's not just reciting a text about the absence of fear, he's enacting it. Schulz never made a big deal of this in interviews. He didn't explain it. He put it in the film and let it be there for whoever noticed. That kind of restraint, the willingness to plant something meaningful without underlining it, without making sure the audience sees it, without taking credit for the depth, is one of the signatures of genuinely great storytelling. And it's sitting right there in a 25-minute Christmas special, available to anyone patient enough to look. 2. The special almost disappeared after its first airing. Here is a fact that sounds impossible in retrospect. After A Charlie Brown Christmas aired in December 1965 to enormous ratings and critical acclaim, there was a genuine period of uncertainty about whether it would ever be broadcast again. The CBS executives who had nearly buried the special before its premiere were not, apparently, transformed into true believers by its success. The issues they had identified, the unconventional animation, the jazz score, the slow pacing, the biblical content, did not disappear because the ratings were good. What changed was that the numbers were too large to ignore. 50 million viewers in 1965 represented a staggering share of the available audience, and even the most skeptical executive understood what that meant for scheduling. But Mendelsohn has recalled, in various interviews over the years, that the future of the special felt uncertain even after its initial success. The question wasn't just whether CBS would air it again. It was whether the rights, the creative relationships, and the logistics of annual broadcasting could be maintained. The special existed in a landscape where holiday programming could disappear from rotation for any number of reasons. It was not, at the moment of its first broadcast, the permanent institution it would become. What solidified its place in the culture was repetition. The second year, and the third, and the decade of annual broadcasts that followed, each one reaching a new cohort of children who would carry the memory into adulthood, who would watch it with their own children, who would eventually watch it with their grandchildren. The special didn't become a classic in a single night. It became a classic through the accumulation of shared memory across generations, each watching the same 25 minutes at roughly the same time of year, building a cultural ritual out of something that had started as a commercial assignment with a 6-month deadline. That's not a story the network planned. That's something that happened to the network because the material was strong enough to demand it. 1. The legacy that Schulz never fully accepted. Charles Schulz won the Peabody Award. He won the Emmy. He was celebrated in his lifetime as one of the most significant American artists of the 20th century, a claim that his most devoted critics would have found extravagant, and that his most devoted admirers would have considered obviously true. He produced Peanuts for 50 years. He drew every strip himself. He refused to license the characters for products he found demeaning. He maintained creative control over the animated specials in a way that was virtually without precedent for a comic strip artist working in television. And yet the evidence suggests that Schulz never quite made his peace with the weight that A Charlie Brown Christmas accumulated over the decades. Not because he was ungrateful for its success, but because the special had become, in the public imagination, something larger and more freighted than he had intended when he made it. He had wanted to say something honest about the holiday season. He had wanted to capture a feeling, the particular sadness of December, the gap between what Christmas promises and what it delivers, the question of what the whole thing actually means. He had wanted to make something true, and he had succeeded beyond any reasonable expectation. But success of that magnitude comes with a kind of distortion. The special became a tradition. Traditions become sacred. Sacred things are no longer examined. They are simply received. And Schulz, who had built his career on examination, on the willingness to look at human experience without flinching, was not entirely comfortable being the author of something people had stopped questioning. He retired from Peanuts in February 2000, citing health issues. He died on February 12, 2000, the night before his final strip was published in newspapers. The timing felt, to many who knew him, like something he would have drawn, something he would have given Charlie Brown. What Schulz left behind is not just a special, it's a piece of evidence. Evidence that sincerity, in the right hands, is not a weakness but the most durable creative force available. Evidence that the things we make when we're willing to be honest, truly honest against the advice of every professional instinct, are the things that outlast everything made with greater resources and lesser courage. The tree Charlie Brown chose was small and impractical and couldn't support even a single ornament without bending over. Everyone laughed at it. And then Linus wrapped his blanket around its base, and the other children decorated it, and it became the most important tree in the room. Not because it got better, because someone believed in it when no one else did. A Charlie Brown Christmas is 60 years old. It was made in 6 months on a budget that major studios would have considered inadequate for a single episode of Saturday morning animation, by a team that included a jazz musician who got the job because of a song heard through a car window, a director working around constraints he couldn't afford to solve, and a cartoonist who drew from his own loneliness and insisted on Bible verses and refused to put in a laugh track even when the network asked him to reconsider. It should have been forgettable. It should have been one more piece of seasonal programming that aired once, met its contractual obligation, and dissolved into the archive. Instead, it became the longest-running animated holiday special in American television history. Here's why that matters, not just as a fact about television, but as something worth sitting with. We live in an era of extraordinary production values. Content is made with resources that the people behind A Charlie Brown Christmas could not have imagined. And yet, the things that endure, the things people return to every year, that they insist their children see, that they find themselves watching alone at midnight in December when they can't quite name what they're feeling, are almost never the most polished or most expensive things. They're the most honest things, the ones made by people who were willing to say something real and take the risk that it might not land. The ones where you can feel, watching them, that the person who made it actually believed in what they were making. That's the lesson of A Charlie Brown Christmas. Not that simplicity beats complexity, not that small budgets produce better art, but that conviction, genuine, unhedged, professionally inadvisable conviction, is the one ingredient that no amount of money can manufacture and no network note can supply. Good grief. It really is a wonderful special. What does A Charlie Brown Christmas mean to you? And is there a detail you've noticed that we didn't cover here? Tell us in the comments. Those conversations are the best part of doing this.